Hello, welcome to Angels Uncovered. My guest today is Diane Haworth. She is a spiritual coach and mentor, and I'm so excited because we're going to be talking today in depth about her out of body near death experience. And we're also going to be talking about her angel encounter. She feels that she actually interacted with an angel. Thank you so much, Diane. Welcome. So happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I love talking about this because I know how inspired I am by these kinds of stories, and it's a joy and an honor to share these with you and your audience. So thank you.
We'll start by going back to the day of your near death experience, if you want to talk about the sequence of events that led up to that NDE.
Yeah, and I already have my Kleenex just in case.
Yeah.
Case. So this was 40 years ago now. I was pregnant with my first daughter, my first child, my daughter, and the pregnancy was not going well. I had to be sent to a regional medical center because I'm in a tiny little town in Virginia, and I had to go to Charlottesville, to UVA, actually, to a big medical center. What happened was I had what we called preeclampsia back in the day. And basically, my kidneys were shutting down, my brain wasn't working. It was serious for me and the baby. At that time, my daughter Stephanie was probably 28 weeks. That's when I delivered. So that's a full 12 weeks early. And I remember being taken to the hospital by ambulance. I'm away from home. I'm 90 miles away from my family or friends, and this is before cell phones or emails or even pagers, anything like that, right? So it was really isolating. My husband at the time, Stephanie's dad, stayed with me as much as he could. Um, but it was scary. And there was a period right before she was born where I started to crash. I was dying. And I remember I had been in extreme pain, and I just remember it was like I just was leaving my body, and I saw the tunnel of light that everybody talks about. Now, again, this is before there was the internet, there was beautiful podcasts like yours. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I had never heard of this kind of thing. I am just suddenly out of pain. I know I'm not in my body. I can hear people rushing around and I can hear crash
Mhm.
carts and all these things, but it got more and more faint. That pull to what was going on medically just sort of faded, and I was going through this tunnel of light. Now, I know that people have different experiences. I can only speak to mine. There was an it's hard to even put in words. There was an overwhelming feeling of peace and calm and love, but it is so much bigger and more profound than even the love we talk about as humans. It was glorious. I mean, it's still all this time it was absolutely glorious. And I realized at that time, I could stay there. And I was ready to stay. And I was ready to stay there. Now, I personally didn't see a being, but I did hear, I knew that there were other entities, angels, whatever they were. I knew something else was there with me.
Mhm.
And I heard, if you stay here, they told me who would be raising my baby, and that was not acceptable to me. That was a no. It was like, "No, not that." I thought certain person would be able to take care of the baby, and I heard that's not the way it would happen, and I immediately said no, and I went backwards through the light. It's like I crashed back into my body, and at that moment, all the pain, all the confusion, all the sounds, they came right back. Now, I didn't even know I never heard of a near-death experience, and quite frankly, my family thought, they had given me some good drugs because I was in hospital, and I had had some sort of a hallucination. It just wasn't a hallucination, and I can tell you from that moment forward, I have never been afraid of death. I'm not a big fan of pain, but I've never been afraid of death. That when my parents died, when my husband died recently, it was so comforting to me, yeah, to know how they would be embraced.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I'm so thankful that you shared it. And I think the first question that's coming to mind for me is, would you be willing to talk a little bit more about the contrast between that day in the hospital leading up to it versus what you were feeling while you're in that NDE? Because I think a lot of people listening, and for myself, um, I don't think we even necessarily realize the kind of stress that we're living with day to day, whether it's even just dealing with traffic or household responsibilities, pressures at work, health challenges. Um, can you just help us to understand a little bit better about the difference between while you were in that NDE versus before?
You know, what a great question. And thank you for asking it because you're right. Although I was in a health crisis and literally was dying, most of us hopefully will never be in that kind of crisis, but we're in plenty of other crises, right? There's maybe a health challenge in our family. There's a problem with work. Oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to pay the mortgage this month. There's
Mhm.
plenty of reasons to
Right.
feel uh, tethered to the chaos that's in the world right now. What the only way I can say it, I'm stumbling for words because the experience just it was otherworldly. It was beyond any sense of peace or love or support or fulfillment, anything that I had experienced in physical form. It was just beyond all of that. And that's why I think a lot of people who have gone through what I've gone through, they struggle to explain it. Um,
Mm.
all I can tell you is one of the one of the threads that is true for almost all humans is fear of death. And that is not a fear of mine anymore. What I saw was what I experienced really was so beautiful, so encompassing, so peaceful, so yeah, it's when I hear people talk about it, when I've seen in my own visions, the light of the all, that's where I was. And it It felt expansive, whereas we're obviously very contained, right, in physical bodies. And certainly when you're in pain, whether it's physical, mental, like you're grieving, whatever's going on, it's very body centric. This is not that. There is this expanded knowing, and it's beyond trust. It's not like you trust everything's okay. You just know. It is a knowing beyond anything I have ever experienced in human form.
Wow. So it sounds like you're saying it was as real as maybe to us as human experience. The sky is blue, or if it's raining today, that we feel certain of, we're sure of. It was it was that level of certainty that you definitely were in this other realm. Totally different from our human experience, but it was a level of certainty that you can be sure of. Because I think for myself, and I'm sure most people, there is a fear of death.
Mhm.
Um, that makes me wonder, how could we be so certain? And of course, I always want the certainty,
Of course.
that there is some realm, whether we want to call it like a heaven. Um, but what was it that made it so certain in your mind?
You brought up a couple of good things that I want to actually loop back to because it was really brilliant. You said, "Oh, we're certain, like we're certain of the sky." So that's a great
Right.
example. Everybody can go outside and look at the sky, whether it's raining, snowing, whatever, and you just trust in the expansiveness of. Nobody believes there's like an endpoint to the sky. I mean, maybe the sky and the space, but we learn to, as adults, kind of wrap our head about around this infinite idea of space. We are that infinity, and I experienced it in that instant. I think what happens as humans, we're all on this human journey, right? And I happen to currently be in a grief path, and we all will be there one day because we all lose people and jobs and pets and situations that we love. And until you've been through one, when you're in the middle of it, it's like, I won't survive this. There's just no way. I can't see my way out of it. But if you've been blessed like I have, there will be friends and family around you that will support you and go, this is a dark day, and we're going to sit with you in this day, and it will pass. And
Mhm.
you do get on the other side of whatever it is, even though you can't imagine it at the time. This is so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
This is so much bigger than that. Um, yeah, this is just bigger, more encompassing. You're right. It's really a challenge, I think, to accept some woman you've never heard about talk about how great death is, and that's what I'm saying is the afterlife or whatever we want to call it. You know, it wasn't that. I'm going to correct myself. The continuation is what has really struck me over the years. And many mystics, even the guy that is at the ARE, Edgar Casey, he talks about death being you just go from one room into the next.
Yeah.
And it was so continuous, at least my experience. There wasn't, yeah, it was just continuous, this continuous of consciousness, of conscious energy. I'm not sure what we would call it. Um, but that was striking to me. The
Yeah.
only thing that I left was the pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain of, "Is my baby gonna be okay? Can I hold her until it's safe to have her born?" That
Mhm.
was a big thing. We were days trying to figure out how long I could keep her inside because she was so young. Um, all of that was gone, and I knew everything was perfect. Even
Yeah.
if my human mind didn't see anything as perfect, I could understand the perfection from a different perspective.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what it is. It's a different perspective. The difference between being on the first floor of a building and looking around and being on the 100th floor.
So, okay, so that leads me to another question. Is that experience something that we could replicate in our human experience? Have you found practices that can bring you back to that same feeling or moments in life where you felt like you returned to that feeling? Or is that impossible for us here on earth?
I have personally found that in deep meditative practices.
Mm.
Now, it was different in that I wasn't necessarily in extreme pain and mental duress and, then was in this other place, and I've never well, that's not true. One other time I did experience the light, but in deep meditative practices, I have felt a release where you are bigger than your body. You are
Mhm.
back to what people like, Dr. Joe Dispenza describes as infinite potential. One of the
Mm.
things that happens in this body for me and my clients, my students, and all of us from time to time is we only see our limitations, right? We see our limitations. And believe me, when I was sick in that hospital bed 40 years ago, struggling to keep my baby alive and me alive, the doctors kept telling my family, they're both going to die. You're going to lose them both. You have to convince her, meaning me, you have to convince Diane to let us take that baby early. And I wouldn't do it because I knew that decreased my daughter's chances of survival. It would save me, but it was not going to be good for her.
Mhm.
And when I came back from that experience, yeah, it did change me. Now, we know now from some medical research that people that have gone through near death experiences actually have biochemical changes to the brain.
Right.
Um, I I have read about that. I'm not an expert in what that is, but I can tell you, yeah, I think differently than I used to. Yeah, there's just this foundation of trust
Mhm.
that came about from that, and that doesn't mean I don't have my bad days, by the way. I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression. But it's just kind of like, when you eat basically a good, healthy diet, and then every once in a while it's Christmas or it's somebody's wedding, and then you go, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Those are great foods every once in a while, but this steady diet is what makes me feel good."
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think maybe a good follow-up question would be, what were your religious beliefs before the NDE, and how did you experience change specifically with religious beliefs? And also maybe just in terms of practical, like day to day, how did you notice yourself changing just with simple things, day to day life?
So I grew up in a very small Virginia town about 50 miles outside of DC, which when I was growing up was still pretty rural. And I went to the local Presbyterian church, and it was a very beautiful, loving experience. My traditional religious education uh, was lovely. There wasn't a lot of damnation or things that I hear some other people have experienced. That wasn't my experience. I went to church and Sunday school with people who were loving and kind and who wanted to do the right thing, by the way. They wanted to do the right thing. So that's where I was when I had, or that was my experience, right? As I had this NDE. When I came out of it, I still had to go through the birth of my daughter. I still had months of not only taking care of her, but me getting back health wise. So I guess what I noticed, if I'm thinking back on it, what I noticed was there was more an underlying of trust that I would go back to. And it's not that I didn't get, yeah, scared and nervous. Like, I mean, any new mother will experience things like that. And I was a new mother of a 2-pound baby 40 years ago when we didn't have the kinds of things that we had now. So there was plenty of fear and unknown, but there was always this, but remember, this peace, this quiet that I now know we all have inside. For people like me with really busy minds, I just don't always hear it because I'm in my busy mind. That's why for me, meditation has been amazing. And that came to me after, oh, I guess my daughter was probably about 10 years old, maybe 10, little around 10 years old when I found that, because that was a way to help me get back to the calm and to get back to
Mhm.
the peace.
Yeah, right. Um, did you feel comfortable sharing your story with people in maybe like the weeks and months following the NDE? And how do you feel compared to now talking about your story? And how did people react?
Well, it at first, right, they thought it was the drugs. They thought, they must have given you some kind, and they were giving me some kind of drugs. I don't know what kind it was to help keep my blood pressure down and things like that. Um, Not hallucinogenics, but, we weren't doctors, and my family just thought, well, she just went on a little trip, and that's weird. Nobody knew about NDEs. Like, it wasn't common knowledge the way it is now. So you have to remember the time that it occurred. Now, eventually, I realized my family wa wasn't gonna get it, and that was fine. We were worried about the baby and life and all these kinds of things, but I did share it with my minister.
Mm,
Yeah, um, who wasn't, I mean, he was a wonderful person, he is still a wonderful person, but it wasn't within the doctrine of the church.
right.
So it was like, "Oh, okay, that's good. That's good, Diane. Okay." Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did not, yeah, it wasn't like I felt accepted. It wasn't something I talked a lot about. It just wasn't. But as years went on and as I started to meditate and as I felt more confident about sharing that, and I mean, good grief, now I've been a spiritual teacher for 18 years. Now I'll tell anybody that will hold still for 30 seconds if they're if they're interested, because to me, it's very hopeful. My doctors told me after the fact that, just a couple years before the event that I had, that both my baby and I would be dead, that we just wouldn't have been able to survive.
Yeah.
So it just, to me, it was just miraculous, and I am just so eternally grateful for that.
Yeah. So I'm so touched by these stories, and to me, they always help expand my own faith. But I get a lot of comments from people that love the stories as much as I do, and I also do get the reaction of people doubting it and questioning whether it could be real. So what would you say to someone who does have doubts about if they haven't had the experience themselves? It's understandable. But what would you say to someone who questions whether this could be real?
Well, I get that all the time, and here's what I say, I would have been right with you. I would have been the first I would have been right with you, like, "Oh, yeah, she saw a light. Sure she did." I just would have been in the same place. The thing that is so miraculous about me and my experience is that there is nothing miraculous about me and my experience. I
Mm.
am a regular person. I don't levitate in the morning. I don't have Oprah on speed dial. I don't, sit cross-legged at ashrams and morning light and chant. I don't do any of that stuff. I get up and pay my bills and do the laundry and work with kids and grandkids and everything like everyone else. So I don't ever try to convince anybody. What I do say is, if you're interested, I invite you to listen with an open heart and you'll know what's right for you. And what I've seen over the years, because this is what happened for me personally, that every time we come across a beautiful podcast like this, or somebody says, guess who I heard on Jen's podcast? Guess what they were talking about? You're planting these seeds
Mm.
and they blossom at the perfect time for you.
Mhm.
I don't know what that is, right? I just trust that everyone works with their soul, their higher self, to come to this understanding and blossom in the way that's best for them, their families, their communities in the time where they are.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. And that is resonates so much with me because I can think back to that moment when I think I became open to to hearing these types of stories. It was right after the passing of my grandfather, and so I was questioning things about if there's an afterlife. Is there a soul? Does life continue on in some way? And that was when I got introduced to my first spiritual book, which was Anita Morjani,
Yeah,
Dying to Be Me.
I've met her.
Oh, have you? I love her. I love her message, and I think that was the moment when I was just ready to receive it, was after his passing, and the book was just I think I saw it in an airport. Um, yeah, so I love that.
I love that you mentioned her name because she is the most normal, grounded person.
Yeah,
You just, y-
that's why I loved her book, it was so relatable. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it felt like she was just like me.
yeah. And what a beautiful gift your grandfather gave you.
Right.
And who knows if that was part of his life path.
Yeah, I have felt that so much. Um, gosh, I think I've said this before, but I felt closer to him after his passing and feeling like I was receiving signs from him than I did when he was alive, actually. So it's been a really incredible journey for me so far.
Oh, I am so
Yeah.
glad you're open to that. That's what's happened with my husband, as a matter of fact. And I think part
Oh,
of it
wow.
is, yeah, I even have like a blog on a sign that he sent me. But the thing that has come to me, and I don't know anything about you and your grandfather, but certainly in a partnership and a marriage, we were together 24 years. There's lots of love and there's lots of joy and there's lots of headbutting and there's lots of why did you forget to pay the insurance bill and thought you were going to do the dishes and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
From where he is now, it's just love responding to love. All that human stuff that doesn't matter, that's not between us anymore. It's just love responding to love.
I love that. That's beautiful. We should definitely do a part two to this interview so we can talk about the signs. I'd love to do that. But maybe we could shift gears for now and talk about in that same hospital stay
Yeah.
when you had the angel encounter. Maybe just talk about the steps that led up to that moment.
So we've already discussed I was very sick. I had this near death experience. They brought me back, right? Because I was dying. They brought me back. The baby was still inside at this point. I went to the hospital on a Monday. Um, it was probably Tuesday, Wednesday that I had the near death experience. By Friday, Thursday, probably, I started not doing well. Friday, I looked really bad. Um, Early morning on Saturday, they did an emergency cesarean. And by that time, they had told me that they had given me steroids that would help speed the lung development for my daughter. So
Mhm.
for preemies, That's the last thing that develops right in the womb is the lungs. So the longer we could keep her in and get those lungs developed, the better chance she would have for survival. But
Mm.
I knew if I could just get to Saturday. So it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I started crashing. So they did an emergency cesarean. Um, the baby's born. I don't get to see her actually until Sunday because I am so sick at this point. She is rushed immediately to the NICU unit, which in the hospital where we were at the time was on a different floor. So it's just not like it is now. So I was able to see her that Sunday night. Monday morning, I remember I was in my room. My husband, Steffi's dad, was with me, and two doctors came in. And I could just tell by the way they were coming in. Their shoulders were down. They were younger. UVA is a teaching hospital. And you could tell they were looking at each other like, who's going to say this? And I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? And they explained that there had been a bleed in the head. The exact words, I'll remember it forever.
Mhm.
Stephanie. And I said, what does that mean? And they said, we don't know. She could be blind. She could be mentally impaired. It's not that abnormal for a baby born this soon. Again, she's 12 weeks early.
Right.
She's 2 pounds. It's not that unusual. She's in the NICU. We're doing everything we can, and NICU is neonatal intensive care unit. But we don't know. And then they turned around and left, and I just broke.
Mm.
I just broke. I had been through all of this, and of course, you got your hormones, and I'd just been through
Mhm.
major surgery. And my husband, to his credit, had been by my side. He
Mhm.
just couldn't take it. And he said, I don't think he said anything. He just got up and left. So
Mhm.
I am just literally in my bed sobbing. It's like, help me, somebody, please help me. And I can remember my bed was a little bit away from the door, and in the doorway was this young woman. And I can see her right now. She had dark hair. She had dressed very casually, jeans and a top. And she never came into the room. She was in the doorway. And I looked up and she said, I know who you are. I have a baby in the NICU unit, a little boy. We're from Roanoke. So, I mean, that got my attention. Here's another mother going through the same thing. And I mean,
Mhm.
I'm still sobbing. It's 40 years later, and it still gets me.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm here to tell you it's going to be okay. You need to take it day by day. And when that's too much, you take it hour by hour. And when that's too much, you just live moment to moment. But everything's going to be okay. And I immediately felt this flood of relief. Like, "Oh, okay. It's gonna be okay." And then she just left. She was yeah, just such this beautiful, calm presence and delivered this information with such confidence. It's just like, "This is the way it is."
Yeah.
So, my husband came back in, and I'm like, "We gotta get up to the NICU unit. Here's what happened." And I explained what she looked like, and he had to get a wheelchair, couldn't walk at this point, had to get a wheelchair, we had to go up. So we go to the NICU unit and we suit up because that's what you have to do. And I asked the floor nurse, I'm looking for the mother from Roanoke. She has a little baby boy here. Now, the unit at that time was only like 12 babies, 12, 13 babies. It wasn't big. And my Stephanie was in with the babies who were the most critical. So you had like you had the most critical, a little bit better, and then the kids that were really just getting ready to go home.
Mhm.
So everybody knew everybody. And she said, "Oh, there's no baby boy from Roanoke here." And I said, "Oh, yeah," because I figured maybe she just didn't know where the kid was from. "Yeah, here's what the mother looks like. Here's what she's wearing. I just saw her
Yeah.
10 minutes ago." And she said, "I'm sorry. There's nobody here that looks like that. I know all the parents. There's nobody here like that. There's nobody here from Roanoke. There's no little boy like that."
That's so incredible.
Yeah.
And her words are so moving to me
Uh-huh.
because I can see how that was exactly what you needed to hear in that moment, but it's also, I feel like, words that any person would need to hear when they're going through a dark time, is just to take things moment by moment so they don't feel so overwhelming. Can you when you're thinking back on this woman, was there anything unusual in her appearance? Can you still see her vividly now?
Yes.
And also in terms of just her demeanor, was there anything unusual about the way that she acted toward you?
Probably it was how unassuming she was. And
Mm,
one of the things that I have now come to wonder, I certainly wondered about it after I was convinced this was an angelic visit, is that the form makes so much it makes a difference. If somebody had come with with big wings and a halo and, just flapped into my room, I don't think I could have taken that, Jen. I
yeah,
I think it just would have been
terrified.
too much.
Yeah.
A mother in the same situation that I was in, someone like that to appear to me, immediately to me gave her credence. Okay, here's somebody that knows what this feels like. So that was immediately she had my trust. She was I can see her, but I can tell you that there wasn't anything. Yeah, she wasn't super beautiful. She was very, I mean, she's a lovely looking woman, but I mean, jeans, a blue shirt, just like how you would wear. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that is different is usually when you're in a hospital, often you will see people that are walking fast because you're not in a hospital usually unless there's an issue.
Yeah.
Now, unless you're coming to see a healthy baby, like your wife just had a baby, then that's a happy thing. But it was her calmness, how steady she was, how resolute. It was like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. And
Yeah.
I believed her instantly. A stranger, I believed instantly.
That that feeling that she conveyed, have you ever had moments since where you felt like you had a similar experience? Maybe it wasn't that same woman that you saw again, but maybe through some other interaction or something like that.
Not with a human or who I thought was a human at the time. I haven't had that. However, I've had experiences. The one that the vision, I guess you would call that I had when I had got a process called the Vela Principles. There was that same resolute certainty that their light it was involved in that too, and there just was this overwhelming feeling of peace, of calm. It's beyond trust, of knowing. Was just
Mm.
knowing. And that's one thing that she did. There was just this knowing she had. Now, in my mind's eye, because she is in the doorway, I will say sometimes I remember there being a little light behind, but quite frankly, that very well could have been, they have those really bright lights in hospitals.
Mhm.
I don't know where the light came from. It could have
Yeah.
been just the regular light in the hospital, but it was just the demeanor of peace, of certainty, of knowing. Yeah, of knowing, and I just instantly trusted her. Instantly.
Yeah. I love that idea too of angels can take any form that whatever might be most comforting, whatever the person can handle. Because I've definitely heard many stories of angels, and it seems like the one common thread isn't how they look, but it's how they made the person feel. And it's always just a sense of such deep reassurance and peace.
Yeah. And I think if I can share something else with you, because this just happened recently,
Yeah.
even though we think this woman that I saw, that I know I saw, that I still see in my mind 40 years later, there's no question that that happened to me. None. None at all. And I believe that even people we know, I was just thinking the other day that I lunch with a friend of mine that I had not physically seen. She's moved out of the area, and I probably hadn't seen her for several years. She happened to be coming through the area, and we met for lunch. And of course, she asked me about my Joe. And I thought I was having a pretty good day, like, everything's cool. I'm going to have a good time with my friend.
Mhm.
And I just broke in the middle of a restaurant. And she became
Yeah.
a reflection of love for me. She just held my hand and she cried with me. To me, angels perhaps are just this whatever reflection of love we need at that moment. And last week it was my friend.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I love that. I love that message that we could be an angel to someone. That's so inspiring.
And yeah, I don't think any of us wake up and go, I'm going to be an angel today.
Yeah.
But I don't think my friend woke up that day either
Right.
thinking, I'm going to do this for Diane. And she just was so present. That's a good word. I'm glad that you asked the best questions, Jen. One of the things that I remember from the lady in the hospital, the mother, her presence. She was totally present with me. When
Yeah.
those doctors came in, they were like, we have to give these new parents this news and then let's get out of here. And I get it. I understand. But my friend was totally present with me for the pain, for the joy, for the laughs, for the tears. She was absolutely totally present. And I think that's something I've learned over the years. Love is ever present,
Yeah.
ever present. And
Yeah.
I know for me, often I'm just out here thinking, well, I'm going to go find it here, here. It's always here. It's
Right.
always here. But it takes different forms when you need it to.
Yeah.
That's that's the way it seems to me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Because what that was bringing to mind for me is just myself in terms of like my parenting, because I can feel and see the difference when I'm really present with my son, or when it's a morning I've woken up too late and we're racing through trying to get through the morning routine and race him to school. Yeah, that is the thing that makes a world of difference. That's the thing that makes me feel like I've had a meaningful experience or day with him versus feeling like I was like surviving the day with him.
I think that that's one of the blessings that come with children, right?
Yeah.
I have a 20-month-old grandson, and he's just always present. You
Right.
know if he's
Right.
hungry, you know if he's gonna have his diaper changed, you know if he wants to play.
Yeah.
There's no pretending. He's just in the moment.
Right.
And whether it's a human baby or kittens or puppies, they're the same thing, right? That authenticity that we forget in our busy life. But it's that presence.
Beautiful. I love that. So this actually might this discussion might have already answered the question, but maybe you have more to say about it. Because I was going to also ask you, people who have not had what they feel is a divine encounter, but maybe are longing to have one,
Mhm.
what advice would you give them? And obviously, I think being present in the moment would clearly be something that would be helpful.
So I can I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. Um, but I can tell you that I have been told by brain specialists who are experts in that sort of thing that meditation, consistent meditation, helps create a space for
Mhm.
you to have those kinds of encounters. That's one thing. The other thing is, and I just did a video on this actually for my own YouTube channel. The other day I was out walking and I just happened to have some physical pain. And I don't know about you guys, but when you don't feel well and you've got some physical pain, a lot of times it's just going on your head. Oh, this hurts, blah, blah, blah. Everything that we all do.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, I am putting my focus, I am present for everything but the love that's around me.
Mhm.
So as I'm walking, and I was in one of our little local parks, I just silently said to myself, show me the love that's reflected around me. And I'm not kidding you, Jennifer. Suddenly I heard crickets and birds and the wind coming through the trees that I hadn't recognized just literally 30 seconds before. I saw colors. It was like suddenly I was seeing technicolor, right? Because I am looking for love that's reflected to me. I'm
Mhm.
hearing this little stream that I hadn't heard when I was in my head just right doing my this thing. and I moved differently. I was moving with more ease. And what I realized was, as I'm looking for love, and it's not that I need it outside of me, but in that moment where I was feeling less than, right? Because I was in physical pain, I'm saying, just show me, remind me all this love around me. Then I could see these things, and then I would say things to myself like, man, I am so blessed that I can even walk. There's a lot of people that can't walk. I'm out here. I was able to drive here. I'm breathing in. I'm hearing and seeing and smelling all these great things. There was this gratitude that came up. And that what that did was open me up to possibilities
Mm.
that I had not seen before.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
recognizing that love, being in that presence, feeling that gratitude, honest to goodness, there was like, oh, wait a minute. Had you ever thought of that? Well, no, I hadn't. This opens up the possibilities. To me, when I'm very, constricted in my thinking, and my body's constricted, that's where I feel like I'm stuck in the ego personality self. And when I can get out of that, there's where that expanded possibilities, and then there's ideas that come to me that I just would never have thought of when I was in the constricted space.
I love that. And it makes me think because I have collected many of these stories now, and it seems like generally when people have these types of divine encounters, it's typically their darkest day, their lowest day, their toughest moment in life that this happens. And I assume that's because they finally are able to fully surrender and open. Um, but I feel like some of what you're saying is perhaps we could also be open in a quieter moment, a calmer moment, a normal day. Maybe that could also be possible. I don't typically hear those stories from people, but maybe.
I think as humans, we just need sometimes things just have to get our attention. And
Yeah,
we know, just like you shared the death of your grandfather, that when we go through traumas, it makes us stop,
right.
whether it's a physical issue, a death, whatever it is. I don't think it has to be that. As a matter of fact, in some of my work, one of the things that I invite people to do is look at a thing that is really very joyful for them. So for you, maybe it's a perfect day you spent with your son, right? Maybe it's some really cool activity, or maybe it's you guys are just coloring or watching TV, whatever you're doing. But to be present in that and just ask yourself, show me the love that's here. Usually when we're in that mind space, we're just happy and we forget. But there's even greater levels of joy and connection is
Mm,
what I've found.
yeah, I
It
love that.
doesn't just have to be in the trauma, although that's handy.
Yeah. Right. Well, how about this? In terms of both the NDE and the angel encounter, what would you most want people to take from those experiences? For anybody listening, what would be your final or parting message to people based on your own personal experience?
That there is a love that is bigger than the love we associate with attachment, bigger than the love that we have for ourselves, our family, even our children. There is this energy that is intelligent, creative, and expansive that beats your heart and mine. That is what is true. It doesn't make any difference if your football team won on Sunday. It doesn't make any difference if you're fighting with someone. Those are things that are happening in our human life. But this love that runs through every single one of us for eternity, that it's what unites us as one, right? Everybody wants the same thing. You want to love and be loved. That's where I suggest you put your focus. And even if that seems too big for you, just start asking questions. What would it be like if I could see the love that's already here for me?
I love that because in asking the question, I feel like that does give you just a little bit of space, a little bit of openness that might not have been there before.
That's all you
All
need.
you can do is ask the question. That's enough. Well, thank you so much, Diane. Thank you for sharing such beautiful personal moments. I'm so grateful that you're open to sharing. Um, if people are interested in connecting with you, Would you like to talk about how they can connect and maybe any of your upcoming projects?
Oh, thank you. And I really appreciate not only you, but your willingness to explore and share these kinds of ideas. So thank you. And thanks to everybody who will ever watch this broadcast, by the way.
Yeah.
So they can find me two places. I have a link tree at morefromdiane.com, and that's Diane, Diane. And if you'd like to find out about my signature work, which is called the Be Love Principles, it's beloveprinciples.org. And I'd love to see you over in my YouTube channel. I've got a membership community. It would be my honor to walk this path with you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Diane.
Thank you.